UBT honors the historic friendship not only with gratitude, but by counting a shared mission to empower youth, to build leadership, to create a stronger future for Kosovo and Albanians worldwide, because the Kosovo-US partnership is not only part of our history, it is part of our identity and the future we are building together. 250 years of America, 25 years of UBT. Two journeys, one vision, for freedom, for knowledge, for generations to come.
Before we start, I kindly invite Mr. Fatan Bislimi and the President of UBT, Professor Dr. Edmond Hairizi, to take the seat at the panel. Distinguished guests, esteemed representatives of institutions, members of the diplomatic corps, professors, honored speakers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to today's event. We are honored to have you with us as we gather to mark this important occasion, bringing together distinguished academics, policymakers, international experts, institutional representatives and partners for an engaging exchange of ideas and perspectives. Your presence reflects the importance of today's discussion, and we sincerely thank you for joining us. It is now my pleasure to invite Mr. Fatan Bislimi, the project director, to address us.
Well, thank you so much, and Rector Hairizi, and all of you here at the University for Business and Technology, UBT, thank you for being here, and thank you for hosting us. Well, it gives me an enormous pleasure to be here in this smart city that I think will serve as a model for what the future upholds, not only for Kosovo, but for the rest of the region, and especially for our, I think, key pillar of building a prosperous society, which is quality education. America is America today, I think partly because of Americans having historically invested in quality education. And that's why you have the most Nobel Prize winners that come from schools in the United States. That's why you have the most prestigious, and I will add, expensive schools that are in the United States. But I think the reason we're gathered here today is something that transcends the idea of education. Is something that appreciates, honors, and increases or elevates the bond between the United States of America and this country and our nation as such. The America Inspires Freedom, the Kosovo Story Project, has been implemented by the Albanian American Foundation, which was established back in 1989 in New York by former Congressman Joe DioGuardi and Shirley Cloyce DioGuardi, who lead the foundation. And I've had the honor of my life, I say, to lead this initiative with great partners. And one of those great partners is UBT, the project's academic lead partner in the Republic of Kosovo. And let me tell you what excites me the most is the fact that this project is done through a memorandum of understanding with the United States Semi-Quincentennial Commission, known as America 250, which was created by an act of Congress, bipartisan Republicans and Democrats. The honorary co-chairs of this commission in DC are former Presidents Obama and Bush and their first ladies. And Kosovo became, through this project, one, back then when we signed the deal in March, and I think it's still true, the only country in the world that has a program connected to America 250 that is being held in the Republic of Kosovo. Thanks to our partners such as UBT, the municipality of Pristina as our lead partner here, municipality of Prizren, and other institutions and organizations that have put a lot of effort to making this happen. Now, we have been impressed with what we have seen not only in the screen, but what we have seen happening out of this institution. And I think I would not exaggerate when I say that when Rector Hairizi was in the National Prayer Breakfast this past winter, early spring, we kind of started conceptualizing the idea of how we can get UBT into this project, and we succeeded. I think we succeeded because the vision and the leadership of people that run this institution goes beyond running a school, beyond running a university. I think it speaks to the desire and, more importantly, to the will and vision of how we all want our country to look like 10, 15, 20, or even 30 years from now. Now, 250 years of America sounds like a long history, but you know, it kind of coincides with your 25th anniversary, so I kind of wonder what it would be like to stand here 250 years from now. And I know I can't even imagine that because I'm not going to be around. But let's hope that the legacy that you all leave today will be celebrated 250 years from now. Now, with that, I don't want to take more of your time, but I want to do a brief introduction for our distinguished guests from the United States of America. And after I'm done with that, I'll pass on the floor to the program as has been envisioned and prepared by the university. Now, we have 4 distinguished guests that have made their way from Washington to Kosovo to be with us today and in the following days to celebrate America's 250th birthday and the shared bond that we have between our country and the United States of America, which I believe, and I've always said and will continue to say till my last breath, that it is a bond that needs to be cherished, nurtured, advanced, and kept sacred. Because as the video showed, and we all know, and especially for you that have lived through the Kosovo War, you would understand and have kind of your life experience that tells you that without the support of the United States of America, I don't think we would have had UBT. Not in Pristina, we might have had it somewhere else, who knows, but I doubt it we would have had it in Pristina. So I think it's only befitting that the special guests that we have with us today are people that represent those building blocks that have created and maintained that Kosovo-America bond. And I'll start with Professor Daniel Serwer. I'm sure once I say his name, you all will remember either an interview or a piece of writing or a book or an article that had his name attached to it. Now, Professor Serwer is one of America's most respected scholars and policy experts on the Balkans, on conflict prevention, peace building, and post-conflict state development. A professor at the renowned Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies in Washington, D.C., and a former United States diplomat, Professor Serwer has spent decades working on issues related to Southeast Europe in general, democratic transitions, and international security. Throughout Kosovo's modern history, he has been a thoughtful voice and an advocate for peace, stability, and democratic development in the entire Western Balkans region and in Kosovo in particular. His expertise and long-standing engagement with Kosovo has earned him deep respect among policymakers, academicians, and citizens alike. So, Professor Serwer, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We are honored. I'm going to go on with Mr. Edward Joseph. He's a lecturer and a renowned foreign policy expert, educator, and former United States government official specializing in the Balkans and transatlantic relations. And he's somebody who has spent over a decade of work on the ground in the Balkans, including Kosovo. Currently, he's affiliated with the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced and International Studies. He's previously served in several diplomatic and field assignments throughout Southeast Europe and has been actively engaged in promoting democratic reform, regional cooperation, and peace-building efforts. known for his insightful analysis and commitment to constructive dialogue, Mr. Joseph has been a consistent contributor to discussions regarding Kosovo's future and the broader strategic importance of the Western Balkans. Now, indeed, just so that you know, he was at the Dubrovnik summit that happened just days ago when our foreign minister was there and a bunch of other foreign ministers from other countries. And once he leaves Kosovo, he's headed to Ankara in Turkey for the NATO summit there. Next, I want to introduce Besa Tafile Pinchoti. She's, I say, a daughter of Kosovo. Obviously, she comes from an Albanian father from Kosovo and serves now as the Chief Executive Officer of the National Military Family Association, one of America's leading organizations dedicated to supporting military families, veterans, and service members. As I said, born to a Kosovo-Albanian father and raised with a deep appreciation for both her Albanian heritage and American civic values, she has devoted her career to public service, leadership, and advocacy on behalf of military families across the United States of America. Her participation in this project reflects the important human connection that continue to strengthen the bond that I talked about earlier between this country and America. Besa, I know that out of many things you could have chosen to do this week, you chose to be with us, and we deeply appreciate that. Next, a very distinguished guest. I was going to say for the first time in Kosovo, but I can say that. For the first time in an independent Kosovo, but for a second time in Kosovo itself, and that's Sergeant Major Mario Marquez. Mario Marquez serves as the Executive Director for Government Affairs at the American Legion, the nation's largest veterans service organization in the United States. A veteran and public affairs leader, Mr. Marquez has dedicated his career to advocating for veterans, service members, and their families while promoting civic engagement, patriotism, and public service. His participation in the America Inspires Freedom, the Kosovo Story Project, highlights the enduring values of service, sacrifice, and commitment to freedom that unite the American and the Kosovar peoples alike. Now, he has spent over 31 years of his life in service to the United States of America with the United States Marine Corps, has served across continents, and indeed has served right here in Kosovo with the United States forces right after the war. Thank you, Sergeant Major, for your contribution, for the contribution of all those service members of the United States military, Army, Navy, Air Force, you name it, that have been in Kosovo, worked to secure enduring peace and stability in this country, and are today a testament to our bond between these two nations, and who deserve the most appreciation for the freedom that we all enjoy today. Now, having introduced them all, let me just say a few more words, and then I'll be done. And the few more words I want to say relate to the local people in this country that have made this project possible. Now, when I recognize just a few of them, I can't go through on the list. Excuse me, I want to start by saying that an enormous force behind this project and its implementation has been Mr. Ramis Tafile, who will probably join us shortly. He has been an advocate for Kosovo in the United States for over, certainly about half a century, because he's lived there longer than half a century already. And he's been our project board member and, as I said, a driving force behind everything we have done. And so have many other people. Some of them are here today with us, and some of them are not because they're doing other things for other events we're going to have throughout this week. But I see a few that are here. I want to recognize Colonel Fatos Haziri, who's been an indispensable resource for a lot of things that we have been able to accomplish. Mr. Javad Latifi, who is the former head of Kosovo's Independent Media Commission, who's been a driving force behind every effort we have taken to do what we have done so far, and Shpatim Haziri and a bunch of other people that listen, I don't think you would have been able to do UBT without your wife by your side, and then plenty of other people that came along, and we would not have been able to do what we have done and what we're going to be doing this week without all these people. So thank you to all, and Rector, thank you to you, your staff, and UBT, and we hope to see you soon, as we have planned, at another big event that we're planning in DC. So we look forward to that. And the last thing, I keep saying the last thing, but then I keep remembering I have to do more. I'm going to present to you, because then I know I will forget. This is the official America 250, or the America's 250th anniversary coin that we brought from DC. And so I'm going to present this to you, because this is just a small token of appreciation for what you have done and for what this university has done to not only host us and create this program, but more importantly, to show the world that Kosovo's young people are as talented, as smart, as hardworking as anybody else, given the right opportunities. And what you do here, my friends, is giving people opportunities, and please keep doing that.
Good morning. Maybe I can continue. No, thank you, Fatam. Thank you for your great contribution. Distinguished guests, representatives of the Republic of Kosovo, honorable members of parliament, distinguished guest, Professor Server, Professor Joseph, Besa, Mayor Marquez, dear colleagues, dear Academic Council of UBT, staff, students, media, let me, on behalf of UBT, to welcome in this forum, which is a great honor and also a pleasure to have you today here on the celebration of a most remarkable milestones in modern history, the 250 years anniversary of the United States of America. This celebration is much more than a commemoration of nations' founding. It is a celebration of ideas that change the world. Ideas such as freedom, democracy, constitutional governance, human dignity, entrepreneurship, innovation, and the belief that education is the greatest investment in any society can make. These values have inspired generations across the globe. They have certainly inspired Kosovo, and they have deeply inspired UBT, and also me too. This year is also deeply meaningful for us because UBT, as you saw, celebrate its 25th anniversary. 250 years of America, 25 years of UBT. Two different journeys, but both are built upon the same conviction, that freedom creates opportunity, that education creates progress, and the innovation creates the future. Today, however, I don't wish to speak only as a founder and director of UBT. I wish to speak as a citizen of Kosovo, as someone whose own life has unfolded alongside one of the most extraordinary chapters in our nation's modern history. As a student who saw his school closed when Kosovo autonomy was abolished. As a young person who continued learning in private homes, because education itself had become an act of peaceful resistance. As a young academic at the University of Pristina, who believed that even under occupation, education should never stop. As someone who looked toward Washington with hope during the darkest years of the history. And finally, as a founder of a university that chose to build Kosovo's future through education, innovation, and international partnership. My story is not a unique. It's the story of thousands of young Kosovars of my generation. During those difficult years, America was much more than a distant country. For us, America represents hope. Hope that justice would prevail. Hope that democracy would triumph, hope that freedom was possible. I still remember the visit of Senator Bob Dole to Kosovo. For many around the world, it was simply a political visit. For us, it was a message that someone in Washington believed in our rights, that someone was listening, that we were not alone. Later came President George Bush, Christmas warning. Then came the unwavering support of the United States Congress. Then Senator Joe Biden became one of the Kosovo's strongest advocates. President Bill Clinton, Secretary Madeleine Albright, and General Wesley Clark become part of Kosovo's story forever. President George W. Bush strongly supported Kosovo independence. President Barack Obama continues strengthening Kosovo democratic institutions. President Donald Trump encouraged new avenues of economic cooperation. President Joe Biden, throughout his public service, has continued to support Kosovo's sovereignty and democratic futures. Administration changed, political parties changed, yet one thing remained constant: the friendship between Kosovo and the United States. The friendship between our two nations, however, began long before the 1990s. President Wilson defended the principles of self-determination at a decisive moment for the Albanian people. The Albanian American community on the other side, led by visionaries such as Fan Noli, Fajkonica, and the Pan-Albanian Federation Vatra, built the first great bridges between our nations. Generation after generation, Albanian Americans carried Kosovo's voice into the institution of the United States. Their contribution reminds us that diplomacy is not built only by governments, it is also built by people. Looking back today, I believe the relationship between Kosovo and the United States can be understood in 3 chapters. The first chapter is From Hope to Freedom. America stood beside Kosovo when freedom was only a dream. Without the political, diplomatic, humanitarian, and military support of the United States and its allies, Kosovo's history would have been very different. For this, our gratitude will always remain part of our national memory. Yet freedom was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of new responsibility. When we found UBT in 2001, Kosovo had just entered a new chapter. Resources were limited, infrastructure was modest, but our vision was very ambitious. We believed education would become Kosovo's greatest investment. We believed universities should not simply educate professionals. They should educate leaders, innovators, researchers, entrepreneurs, responsible citizens. And through this journey, America was never simply our model. America became our partner. American universities opened their doors. The United States Embassy here supported academic cooperation and our first mobility to visit United States universities and institutions. Programs such as Fulbright created lasting bridges between our institutions. Together, we began building something much greater than academic exchange. We began building trust. Today, 25 years later, UBT has evolved into an international ecosystem of education, research, innovation, and technology development. Together with our American and international partners, we work in areas that will define the future of humanity: artificial intelligence, advanced technologies, healthcare, sustainability, climate resilience, entrepreneurship, digital transformation, education, democracy, peace. Our ambition is not simply to follow global developments. Our ambition is to contribute to them. To prepare young people capable of solving the great challenges of our society, to transform knowledge into innovation, innovation into opportunity, and opportunity into a better future. And now this brings us to the 3rd chapter of our shared journey, from partnership to a shared future. The strongest partnerships are never measured by what one nation gives to another. They are measured by what 2 nations build together. America first gave us hope. Then it stood beside us in our journey toward freedom. Today we stand together as a partner, creating knowledge, innovation, and opportunities for future generations. That, in my view, is the true meaning of partnership. At UBT, our mission is simple: to transform gratitude into responsibility, responsibility into collaboration, and collaboration into opportunities for future generations. Throughout these 25 years, we have also believed that gratitude should never remain only an emotion. It should become institutional memory. That is why UBT has honored many of Americans' friends of Kosovo. We proudly awarded an honor degree to Senator Bob Dole. We honored distinguished Albanian American philanthropist Jim Jema, whose name today lives with our campus. We express our deep appreciation to former Congressman Joseph Diogardi and Shirley Close Diogardi for their decades of commitment to Kosovo. We thank also Dr. Faton Bislimi for his great contribution, and especially now for his leadership in the initiative American Inspired Freedom. The Kosovo story helped bring Kosovo into the official international celebration of America 250, which I think is a very important message and a moment to reflect for the United States. We express our gratitude to the United States Embassy, the Fulbright Program, our partner university, professors, researchers, entrepreneurs, and the entire Albanian American community. We express our gratitude also to our distinguished guests today, Professor Server, Professor Josef Besa, and also Mayor Marquez. Thank you very much for your great contribution. We thank to WATA and to every individual who believed that Kosovo deserves freedom, dignity, and opportunity. Universities have a responsibility not only to create knowledge, they also have a responsibility to preserve memory, to ensure that future generations understand who stood beside them when history demanded courage. Ladies and gentlemen, our parents' generation preserved our identity. Our generation had the privilege of winning freedom and building institutions. The next generation has an even greater responsibility to transform freedom into knowledge, knowledge into innovation, and innovation, as we said, into sustainable development, and sustainable development into a better future for humanity. That is the mission of UBT. That is the meaning of our partnership with the United States. And that is the legacy we hope to leave to future generations. Happy 250th anniversary, United States of America. Congratulations to Kosovo for its enduring friendship with the American people. God bless America, God bless the Republic of Kosovo, and may God continue to bless the enduring friendship between our nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Rector Hayrizi. We now proceed to the institutional award ceremony, and it is my honor to invite once again Professor Dr. Edmond Hayrizi, President and Rector of UBT, to present the institutional award. The floor is yours.
So, in this occasion, that we have a very great opportunity to have those distinguished guests. The university thought it would a perfect match to optimize everything, to have a momentum, as we said before, to thank all of them for the contribution. As I said, everybody has a story, and also you have a story. I mean, a story as an Albanian, as a Kosovars, but a story of Americans who really create their life journey with a story for Kosovo and contribution, which is something that we have to keep in our mind. And I think using this momentum that you will get the floor, I thought based on our decision from Academic Council, we wanted to distribute an honor degree and appreciation for your great contribution. And allow me to start with Professor Daniel Server, which Faton already mentioned the contribution. I mean, Professor Daniel, you know, everybody knows you. We are looking always for what he is saying. Again, till today, with the hope, with the consulting orientation, and really it's decades of this contribution. I don't want to mention all this, but we will issue you an honor degree for excellence in leadership. We issue this highest degree from UBT. For personalities, this show exactly the attributes of leadership in different situations. The attributes that it's not for you, professor, and it's more for the young generation to show a role model and to be inspired for their future, that they should also take the responsibility. And also, as we said, university should be a place to not forgiven, but to keep the memory and the history of their contribution. So in this context, the Board of UBT, and with decision of Academic Council, confirms upon honor degree Excellence in Leadership to Professor Daniel Server in recognition of his outstanding scholarly, diplomatic and public service contribution to peace building, democratic development, and reconciliation in Kosovo and the wider Western Balkan, in appreciation of his steadfast commitment over many years to advancing a just and lasting peace in Southeast Europe, strengthening democratic institutions, promoting regional stability is very important, not just Kosovo, but the region, the peace in the entire Western Balkan, and supporting the Euro-Atlantic future of Kosovo and the region, and in honor of his distinguished academic leadership, policy engagement, and principled advocacy on behalf of human dignity, international cooperation, and the peaceful resolution of conflict. Thank you, Professor. And if you are able to. I mean, there is another placard, but if you... Yes, okay, ele ma bon pa. Ele impact ma bon. We can continue with the rest of it. So I think it would be nice to continue with the same format, a certification of recognition from our academic council for Professor Edward Joseph. I mean, we know also your contribution, Professor, decades and still very active. Thank you for everything you are doing and this is in recognition of his distinguished academic and public service contribution to peace, democracy, and conflict resolution in Kosovo and the Western Balkan, and for his enduring engagement in advancing democratic values, regional stability, and the transatlantic partnership, and also for your contribution to education system here in the region. Thank you. This is also a part of ceremony. You know, we are very proud of Albanians. We are very proud of contribution, but in this case, Ms. Pesa Tafila Pinchoti, it's not just an Albanian American contributors, but in this case, she takes a very important role, a great role as a CEO in supporting the leadership. Let's say, in this context, we appreciate and offer a certificate of recognition based on decision of Academic Council in recognition of her leadership in support of military families, public service, and the strengthening of civic responsibility and the transatlantic partnership, and for her contribution to the American Inspires Freedom, the Kosovo Story initiative. Thank you very much. As we said, last but not least, Mayor Mario Marquez, what we can say for the U.S. Contribution as in the military and all those things, so the peace, the freedom. A lot of people, they don't understand, but our generation understand what does mean. If you don't have peace, if you don't have freedom, what is the perspective? So in this context, small countries also need support, and I think this and your support, even with your presence, make a great contribution that we can today also come back and build something for this generation and also becoming a partner. So in this context, we use this opportunity and based on decision of Academic Council to confirm the certification of recognition to you in recognition of his distinguished service to the United States, first, including his mission in the post-war Kosovo, his advocacy for veterans and military families, and his commitment to duty, honor, and democratic values, and of course for his contribution, as of for today, to the American Inspires Freedom, the Kosovo Story initiative. Thank you very much. Maybe we change a bit the protocol, but we will switch the place, and now we have the most important as a momentum to get these Turkish scholars in our presence in our university, and I think will be a historical moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rector Hayrizi. Now it is my great honor to invite for the delivery remarks Professor Daniel Server.
First, let me thank the rector, the faculty, and all of you from the UBT community for a great honor. Really, I'm humbled by your attention to what I've done over the years. Let me start by saying how important it is that I don't have to talk about the importance of education today. That it's perfectly obvious that you are convinced of the importance of education, and that my role today is to honor that and to respect it. And I can do that best by trying to do what I have done over the years, which is to tell the truth as I see it. And the truth as I see it is that Kosovo has come a long way. I could cite the statistics, but I can tell you that when I first came to Kosovo in 1998, I called on the Serbian administrator in what became later the president's office, and I invited him to come visit the Council for Human Rights and Freedoms, whose office was a couple of hundred yards away. And he said no, he wasn't interested in doing that. I wasn't surprised. And I went on to visit with Adam Damaci, whom some of you will remember. Not necessarily as the strongest supporter of independence for Kosovo. In fact, he supported a confederation, a Balkan confederation. And I will tell you frankly that I was not an early supporter of independence for Kosovo. Even after the war, I wrote a paper that offered 7 or 8 options for the relationship between Kosovo and Serbia. But when I went to call on Adam Damaci, he didn't speak English, and he had a young English-speaking assistant, a student, whose name was Albin Kurti. You have come a very long way from the long-haired Albin Kurti to the Prime Minister of today, and you deserve compliments for it. You've done it democratically. You've done it with respect for your international obligations. I see a former foreign minister in the audience who was assiduous about making sure that those obligations were respected. Young Albanians used to go to school in basements and apartments during the Serbian rule. Today, look at this. This is absolutely fantastic to witness what you've created. Sometimes people in the Balkans tell me nothing has changed. And my answer is everything has changed. I don't need to give you the statistics, but they're very impressive on per capita income and that kind of thing. So there's lots of good news. And it's good news that we're celebrating the Declaration of Independence, for which, for me, is perhaps the most important American document of our history. Why? Because it enunciates a basic principle in which I believe profoundly, which is the principle of individual rights. Now, I'm not a lawyer like Ed. I can't talk about this in a lawyerly way. But to me, this is the fundamental characteristic of American democracy. But I have to tell you, it's not the only characteristic of American democracy. And it's not the entire history of American democracy. We also have a Constitution, and that Constitution is not entirely based on individual rights. I don't need to lecture you about this. You've all heard about the Electoral College and how it can elect a president that doesn't have a majority vote. I hope you've all understood that the Senate, the upper house of the American Congress, is not a one-person, one-vote institution. It's an institution which privileges less populous states and eliminates my state, District of Columbia, entirely from consideration. There is another long history of America, and it's a long history that includes slavery. It includes counting slaves as 3/5 of a person for purposes of representation in the Congress. We've gotten rid of that, of course, along with the slaves. But what you need to understand is that there's a long tradition in which everybody has not been treated equally in America. We are witnessing a throwback to some of that politics today. I was recently asked in Albania to speak on whether America is still America. And I'm afraid to tell you that my answer was no. America has changed, and American policy towards the Balkans has changed. Nor will it go back anytime very soon. The presidencies of Donald Trump have shifted American foreign policy away from its post-World War II focus on defending and expanding the democratic world. The America you grew up with, an America committed to equal rights, is newer and less established than you think. It really took full form only in the 1950s and 1960s. I remember when this was happening. Until then, racial discrimination throughout the country and white supremacists in Congress were really quite common. This is living memory. This is not ancient history. The liberal democratic order that you are fond of was gestated during World War II and born after World War II. Only generations of political protest and organization expanded the equal rights enunciated in the Declaration of Independence by rich, propertied white men to everybody in the country. That's our history. It's a history of changing the system. It's not a history of preserving the old system. Only generations of political protest and organizing extended equal rights to women, to the poor, to minorities, and to gay people. What does this mean for Kosovo, that we're suffering a retreat from our post-World War II foreign policy? Well, I think what you have to recognize is that it means that we are no longer willing to make the sacrifices that once upon a time we made for your freedom. The truth is that we have now indulged, if I can put it that way, in a foreign policy that is more based on might makes right than on right. Now, you were the beneficiaries of a unipolar moment. The unipolar moment is gone. We now face a peer rival in China and other rivals in Russia and Iran who are serious problems for us. And we didn't face that in the 1990s, and frankly, you benefited from the fact that we didn't face that. But this might makes right foreign policy, the geopolitical approach, pushes you aside, and it pushes the Balkans aside. The administration is no longer emphasizing the expansion of democracy in the world, but transactions that benefit the United States. And that's in place of international community consensus, solidarity, consultation, cooperation, and rule of law. This approach has undermined NATO and left the US isolated from its allies in going to war in the Middle East. I never would have imagined such a thing. The people who really count in the world that Washington sees today are in Beijing and Moscow. They're not. I don't know what that was, but I apologize for it. They're not in Pristina. I hardly need review for you the tragedy of the wars in the Middle East. Something important was achieved in the first war in the Middle East. A good deal of Iran's nuclear program was destroyed. Whether that was wise or not is another question, but something was achieved. The second war is a disaster for the United States. It has weakened the United States. It has left us unable to defend Gulf allies. It has left us without full control of the Strait of Hormuz, which today I really see very little prospect that we will be able to return to a situation in which Iran does not have some measure of control and likely authority to collect fees in the Gulf of Hormuz, in the Strait of Hormuz. question is, what does this weakness of the United States do in the Balkans? Well, you've seen in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I think you should pay attention to what's going on there. You've seen the results of this transactional approach. We've made deals with Milorad Dodik, who is an enemy of freedom and democracy in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We haven't done the same thing with Serbia, which has surprised me a bit, to tell you the truth, and I can't entirely explain it to you. I do not know why the Trump administration is being cold towards President Vučić in particular. But they're not being critical of him either. If there is a place where the theory of stabilocracy, a theory I don't entirely like, is if there's a place where it is true, it's in Serbia. When I ask the question, why do we put up with what happened at Banska? Why do we put up with the kidnapping of the Kosovo policemen in the north? Why do we put up with a riot, a rented riot against NATO troops? The answer is stability. Now, that doesn't apply every place. You can ask President Jukanovic whether it applied to him, or Gruevski, whether it applied to him, or Alija Izetbegovic, whether it applied to him. No, it didn't apply to any of them. But it has applied to President Vučić. It's my hope that we won't see anything like what happened with Milorad Dodik. But your diplomats are going to have to be very careful about that, it seems to me. The changed foreign policy in Washington has important implications for Kosovo, for Kosovo's two strategic objectives, which I would state as entry into NATO, 28, if at all possible, and entry into the European Union. Now, you've all seen the Western Balkans strategy paper that the State Department put together, and very carefully tried to make sure there was that it showed as much continuity with past policy as possible. But you have to read it carefully and realize what's not in it as well as what's in it. What's not in it is NATO membership for Kosovo. And Secretary of State Rubio was blunt about that recently in the Congress. He said that's not something we can bother with right now. Your diplomats have to overcome that reluctance. The other thing that is not mentioned in that paper is the European Union at all. It never appears in that paper. It doesn't appear in that paper because the Trump administration regards the European Union as a competitor, a rival, even an adversary when it comes to trade. And frankly, he's treated a number of the allies as adversaries as well. He's quarreled with the Germans, the French, the Italians, the Danes, the Pope. It's really, I get the message. You don't like those people. So I think there's some very difficult times ahead for Kosovo. You cannot rely on the Americans. You can rely on these Americans, those of us who are here, but you can't rely on Washington the way you used to rely on Washington. But can you benefit from the current way of doing business? Well, I think so, and I think Vjosa Osmani in particular tried to do that with the Board of Peace membership and with the volunteering for the stabilization force. I frankly think the stabilization force is nonsense, that it will never come into existence. But volunteering for it was a good idea. You get some credit for that, and you need credit in Washington these days. I know that your government is also thinking hard about what value it can add in NATO. And I think it's very important that you develop some capacities to help the NATO alliance, not only to defend Kosovo, but to add value within the alliance. On the EU, I'm afraid I have nothing but bad news. The United States in the past, a Slovene said to me recently, he said, you know, Europe would never have enlarged except for American pressure. That may be true. I don't actually know whether that's true or not. But I can tell you, you're not going to have American pressure for EU enlargement any longer. Quite to the contrary. This administration supported Brexit, it liked Brexit, and it likes Britain weakened the way Britain has been weakened. So I think on the EU, you have to develop the relations with the Europeans that will enable you to achieve what you want to achieve. And I'm not a pessimist about that. I know a lot of you think, you know, the Europeans will never accept us. They think we're all Muslims. They don't like us. We speak Albanian. Well, I think they are going to accept the Montenegrins. I think the Albanians have a pretty good opportunity now. If I were Kosovar, I would want to get ready and make sure I was fully qualified by the time the discussion of Ukraine starts taking place. And Ukraine, the discussion is already beginning. If the window opens, if the political window opens for Ukraine, you want to go through it with Ukraine, not be left behind. I will hope that the United States will turn in a new direction in the future. I don't think it can turn entirely back to where it was. The world will have moved on, even if we wanted to restore the world of the 1990s, even of the 2000s. It's not going to happen. So it's my hope that by the time the United States starts turning around, you'll be in NATO, you'll be in the European Union, and you'll help to show the Americans the right way back to respecting the Declaration of Independence that we are celebrating this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Server. Now it is my pleasure to invite Professor Edward Joseph.
Thank you very much. Do we have a handheld? Okay, that would be great. In the meantime, while they're getting that set, I want to. Thank you. So follow me. Is this on?
We got to go. Can you hear me? It's fine. It's a lot easier. I don't like to speak behind a podium. I think it's a barrier, and we should not have barriers among us. First, I want to thank Rector Harizi for the honor you bestowed upon me, and I want to congratulate you and FISNETA on this remarkable university, what you've done. And I think everyone should give them a round of applause. And here, let me just begin with it. They say a photograph, you know, Confucius, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So this, you know, this was from 1999. Okay, this was a much younger looking version of me. I don't think I have to tell you who they are, but what's important is who they are. And these
These were the Kosovar refugees, okay? You know, this is from Stenkovac. I was a co-manager in that refugee camp in 1999. And it was really quite an intense period, and it was extremely difficult for the kids and their parents, and many of whom, of course, had relatives still here in Kosovo. So someone like me, you know, I have a deep appreciation for what Kosovo has gone through to get to the point where you are today, where you have independence. And we know, of course, also the critical role that NATO played in all of this. And so NATO has been foundational to Kosovo right from the start. And as I've written, and others I know agree, NATO remains critical to your future stability and even to that of the region, so your membership. But there's an obstacle to that, and that's what I want to talk about today. You know the obstacle. It's external to Kosovo. And it's going to lead me to the one word, which is really my lesson. And it's a lesson that I hope you will embrace, because it comes from a spirit of a deep commitment and respect for Kosovo. So that recognition, you know, the pathway, it's blocked because 4 NATO countries do not recognize Kosovo, and that's a real problem. And we have NATO ambassador here who knows this all too well. And I've written and proposed various ways to get through that problem. And I'm still a believer, notwithstanding recent remarks by certain officials. There's strong support in the Congress, and I think there's an understanding in the United States about that. But the word that I want to talk about, I don't want to talk about them. I don't want to talk about these 4 non-recognizers, and I don't want to talk about your larger neighbor to the north and its backers in Moscow and Beijing. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about things that are within your control, because you can't really fully control what these other 4 and other actors do. And it's really that word that's so central, and I think is really the theme, and it's recognition. The word is recognition. And recognition, if you think about it, you see me in a different guise, that was with Hillary on her prior visit to Stenkovac. And if you think about that recognition, it's so central to what all of us do in our countries and as a society, and what we in America represent. And as we recognize on our 250th anniversary, what do we recognize? It's up to us as Americans to recognize what is enduring and true about our heritage and our founding. And our great fortune in our country is to have had remarkable founding fathers. They were fathers. In that day, it was really, men, unfortunately. And our singular founding father, for whom our nation's capital is named, is George Washington. And the remarkable thing about George Washington, he was a fusion of so many things. He was not a great or the greatest thinker of them, but he was a very courageous leader. And he recognized, that's the word I'm going to use, he recognized what was so crucial and important. And he understood and resisted the temptation to remain in power. He recognized that this was a great experiment in people ruling themselves, breaking away from England and royalty and tyranny. Recognition. And there was something else that he recognized. He recognized within society, even at that time, an essential characteristic of the United States: pluralism. He recognized the existence and the rights and the importance, how this is foundational to the United States. It is not just a majority, but that all those. And there was a famous letter
that he wrote in 1790, and he used a phrase that he liked. It was biblical, and it was written by the Jewish community in Newport, Rhode Island, to George Washington, and he personally wrote back this letter. And there's a marvelous quote, I could give it to you, but I want to take the time. But he talked about how each group has the right, and he used this biblical phrase, to sit under its own fig tree, to sit in peace under its own fig tree. So George Washington recognized that what was fundamental is that this is a pluralistic society. And now I come to Kosovo. Okay, what does this have to do with you as you move forward and as you jointly celebrate our history? Because you have that same, in my opinion, obligation to recognize the community that is not present. And let me underscore here, at the end of his quote, he says that none shall live in fear under that, sit in the fig tree without fear. And so this is a message, and it's not a message you've never heard before, but it's so important to repeat. And of course, it doesn't apply just to Kosovo. It applies to Serbia, which doesn't recognize the Albanians, fully recognize the political rights of Albanians in Preševo Valley, and we know that. They don't recognize, and I take this same message and challenge to them. And we have it elsewhere in the region, and you know that. And you know that. But you can't control what they do in Serbia. And you can't control the abuse of political, the erasure of Albanians in Preševo Valley. But what is within your control is how you recognize your communities, and that's the word in the Ahtisaari Constitution, how you go about and recognize your communities. And here, I want to pivot as we look back at our heritage and look past some of these ugly tendencies that we see today and try to restore our strong democratic foundation that our wise founding fathers bequeathed to us. I want you to also take a step back. We had an amazing unifying founding father in George Washington. He at once was courageous military leader and also visionary Democrat and political figure who gave up power when he could have stayed. In my view, you have two sort of overarching figures in your legacy. We can discuss, and you might dispute this, and it's a university, we can dispute. But I see two overarching figures that loom in Kosovo history. And the question is, which of those two do you recognize as the one whose values and legacy you most want to embrace? So who are they? When you fly into the airport, Adam Yashari. Brave fighter. George Washington was a brave fighter. Adam Yashari was a brave fighter. I don't dispute that. Drenica, so extremely difficult. I don't take that away for a moment. You have another completely different figure in your history who was opposite in character and in what he delivered, but so central to the achievement that you have today, and that's Ibrahim Rugova. So I see these two figures, and he, in my view, his legacy, unfortunately, we just met this morning with his son and had the visit at his house, and it was, again, very inspiring to be there. But if we talk about recognition, again, what do you recognize? What do you recognize in your history and going forward? Which of those two visions takes you forward? And I want to emphasize here, lest you think, well, Adam Yashari, brave fighter, he took on the Serbs and so forth. Without Ibrahim Rugova, I don't believe Kosovo would be in the place that it is today. And I'm going to dive in politically for one of the reasons. I remember at the time, you asked interest in the region was the key word reluctant. Bill Clinton, you see the Clintons here, deeply engaged, but belatedly. They didn't really want to get involved in Balkans matters. And neither did the Bush senior administration. And we know the famous quote from James Baker, "We don't have a dog in that fight." And that thinking even carried over into early. Remember, Bill Clinton had been president for 3 years when 1999, so this took some time. And Kosovo took even longer. First intervention, serious, with NATO, was in Bosnia in 1995. And they did the Dayton Agreement. And I can remember at the time asking, I remember Sali Berisha came, I had a chance, and I said to him, what about Kosovo? And this was in a public setting where the US was dealing with Bosnia-Herzegovina, and what about Kosovo? Even Macedonia was addressed in some ways with Greece. There was an agreement. And I can remember Berisha went silent for a second because he didn't want to criticize and antagonize the United States, but he knew this was a tremendous mistake, that Kosovo had been left unaddressed at Dayton in 1995. And then ultimately it led to, inexorably, with given Milosevic policy and Belgrade's stance, all the way from the beginning, it was inevitable that there would be a military confrontation. But Ibrahim Rugova provided a solid framework for policymakers in the West, in the United States and in Europe, to get behind the concept of Kosovo, eventually Kosovo independence, and even at first Rugova was not pushing. Initially there were other demands, but it became clear only independence would be satisfactory. So I want you to think about that. I would like you and invite you to think about it as we celebrate the best in our history, which unfortunately we see the worst opposite trends violating what our founding fathers stood for, and that recognizing something ugly. I invite you to think about the same. And I'm going to, one particular here, particularly as we have Enver here, former foreign minister, you know, one of the key reasons, excuses really, for not getting involved in Kosovo, you know what it was? Greater Albania. Greater Albania. And you see, it was a figure like Ibrahim Rugova, who was reassuring in that, and who embodied a democratic spirit that, in my view, is very much like George Washington. And in my view, is the one that Kosovo should be celebrating. Give Adem Yashari his place, but his place, in my view, is not central and foundational to what Kosovo aspires to be and how it came there. And then, so that's my point to you. And my appeal, and again, this is an appeal, don't think it's, oh, gee, he's just pushing it on us, that we should recognize and imbue this generous democratic spirit. I'm telling you, I'm recognizing the Serbian policy in Preševo Valley, which is disgraceful and completely antithetical to being an EU candidate, which Serbia is. Serbia is formally an EU candidate, and you are not. So I recognize that as well. But I appeal to you all to understand that recognizing the community that isn't present, to look around the room and notice who isn't there, and to ask yourselves, no, Kosovo is under our constitution, we are multi-ethnic, and even you had a senior official who seemed to deny that, which is not good, And to say that this, other communities, the Serb community, they are part of our democracy,
They are part of our democratic foundation. And I know it's difficult, and we all know the record. Oppression. We know repression. And that's what the United States intervened and NATO intervened about. We all know that. But again, at this time when we're looking back at our democratic foundation, your formative stage, your independence, and as you move forward, I appeal to you to have that recognition that it's in your interest, it's foundational to your interest to make every effort, extra effort, to be inclusive and to have outreach. And we know the difficulties, and oh, he's talking about this, and then there's Srpska lista. There's Srpska lista. What is he talking about? I know all about Srpska lista. By the way, in addition, I was UNMIK administrator in Mitrovica, deputy administrator in Mitrovica. I know all about it. I knew Oliver Ivanovic before he was killed. I know all of them, and I know the Belgrade crew. That's not in your control. Only thing that is in your control is how you perceive your democracy and how you recognize that foundationally our basis is we want to be a democracy and a successful one. And again, I congratulate you, Rector, and Finesta, for everything you've done to help create and build the cadre of educated Kosovo youth who are making that democracy possible. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Joseph. Now it's time for Ms. Besa Tafilaj Pinkyoti.
Good afternoon, UBT community. Thank you so much for having us all here today. A lot of people asked me why I would fly all the way across the ocean to celebrate America's 250th here in Kosovo. But the truth is, I can't think of anywhere better to celebrate. I always say that, thank you. I always say that I don't know anyone who loves America more than the people of Kosovo, and I say that all the time, and it's a fact, and I see that on the faces of everyone here in this room. There's a few things that have shaped my life personally. Freedom is absolutely one of them. So my dad, Ramiz Tafilaj, he's here in the front row. I remember, hi Dad. Before I could even walk, he used to carry me to the voting booth in the United States, and he would say, you know, not everyone on earth has this opportunity. Not everyone can go into a voting booth, check a box, and decide who they want to lead them. And that is so important, and I don't want you to ever forget that. And he would say that to me, and I was just a little girl, and I didn't really know what that meant, except for that I just loved this special day with my dad, that I would get to go to the voting booth and I would get to vote. And I've never forgotten that. Freedom, democracy it's a core value of the United States, and it's a core value for Kosovo as well. And right now where I work, it's the National Military Family Association, and what we do is we say we solve the unique challenges of military life with military families. And the reason I think that's so important, and the reason that I want to bring that up here today, is because the best people to solve the problems of a nation, the problems of the world, are the people that are closest to it. And so that's why it's so important to be here in this academic environment with these great minds, because you are the people who will continue this relationship, and you are the people who will bring this forward. I spent all of my summers here growing up. My mom and my dad would bring us to Dubrava, which is a small village outside of Dichan, and I would stay there for 3 months. And I loved it so much that every time it would be time to go home, I would cry and say, can I please just stay here? And that was before the war. I wanted to live here, and I always saw it as my home. And when things started to deteriorate, and I watched what was happening to my family, that was the first time I knew anything about the United States military at all. I'd never really even thought about them, and now I'm here leading this organization. And people always ask me, why? Why do you care about our military so much? Why do you care about military families? You didn't grow up in one. And I didn't grow up in one, but I have an appreciation that I would say that most people who aren't in this room can't understand for what our military did. And those sacrifices mean, you know, to me personally, to know that I can come here to a free Kosovo, see my family, see all of your faces, see you all sharing ideas that we used to have to whisper about. I remember coming here into Kosovo when I was little, and I would say some things, and my family would say, you need to lower your voice. We can't talk about that here. And that's not how it is now. We can sit here and we can say things that we don't agree with. We've heard different perspectives even today, and that is so critically important, and I don't ever want us to lose sight of that. 250 years of America, that's something to celebrate, you know, but celebration is really about kicking off the next 250 years of work. So you take a moment, you reflect on where you've been, and you look at what's ahead, and everything that we do is stronger when we do it together. And we have strong friends, partners, family. This is my family here, it's my family in America, and that is the relationship that will move us ahead. All of you, my family here, that's what will move us ahead to the next 250 years of America, the next 25, 26, 27, where we are now, and keep on doubling that and tripling that for Kosovo. I want to thank you so much for all that you're continuing to do. All of the heart, the mind, the love that you bring to this work every single day. It's really important. And it's important that we pause together and that we celebrate together. And so thank you for inviting me to do that along with you.
Thank you, Ms. Tafilay. Now it's time for Mr. Mario Marquez.
Good afternoon. One of the things I learned in the military is you don't want to be the last man before lunch, so you want to make your comments short, but appropriate and fitting, and I think I will do that. Unlike my distinguished colleagues, I have not been to Kosovo since I served here on peacekeeping and stability operations in 2002. In fact, the legacy of Kosovo lives and has lived within me for my entire life since 2002, which is the last time I was here. And I'm going to tell you a few quick stories and a couple things that I've applied in my life and my career that I credit to the people of Kosovo. When I landed here 2 days ago, we had some coffee at the airport, and then we were driving back to the hotel. And the first thing I saw was the beautiful blue darkening sky with the moon. But before that, I saw the hills, and then behind the hills was the big mountains. And I also saw homes made out of bricks. And I instantly went back to 2002, where I had the same image. I came off of a ship, a Navy ship in Thessaloniki, Greece, in September. We moved up into Macedonia in convoys and trains and military vehicles. After a brief stop in Macedonia, we came into Kosovo and we spread out all over the German sector, pretty much in the south, southwest, southeast of Kosovo. I remember our convoy stopping and we could not get off the road to use the bathroom because there was mines everywhere. And we had to use the bathroom right on the road. That was very impactful. It was instant. And it put this feeling in me of fear. But at the same time, when all the American vehicles are in the middle of the road, the people of Kosovo are walking in the dirt, and there's mines everywhere. And that gave me courage. It made me say, you know what, if they can do it, and this is their country, I can do it. And I'm going to make sure that my Marines, because I had 23 Marines and sailors, are going to do what they have to do on behalf of the people of Kosovo at no matter the cost. And we did our missions. We did humanitarian operations, medical and dental. We went to a village, Ljubovište. And Ljubovište had never had running water. So we worked together with the people of Kosovo, and we built together a plan where we brought in these massive water pipes. And we brought in our Marine Corps helicopters, and we flew sections of water pipes all down to the river. And then the men of Kosovo started putting the pipes together, and they ran this pipe for many kilometers all the way back to the town. And they gave water for the very first time, running water, to the people of that village. And we don't take credit for that. We worked in partnership with the people that already had the willingness, the determination, and the commitment and resiliency. They just needed a little bit of support. But that was profound for me because it taught me what it is to work with a civilian population that's under extreme duress to make things happen no matter what the consequences or the risks are, including mines and things of that nature. I think about the many times that I was driving in the mountains or riding on a donkey during special operations near Dechan, up in the mountains, in the fog, in the cold, and people, children, coming up to you and smiling and you giving them candy or M&Ms or whatever it was. And it was the smiles that really had a lasting impact on me. But what I didn't know was after we finished operations in Kosovo, we went back to our ship. And we were scheduled for a normal deployment. This was in late 2002, early 2003. Several months later, unbeknownst to us, we began combat operations in Iraq, full combat. So we had been on ship for about 8 months, and we were sent into Iraq into full combat operations. My first time in combat. And what I remember the most, as we're driving through southern Iraq, all the way up in towards Baghdad, was the people and the children smiling and waving and just expressing gratitude. And what it taught not just me, but all the Marines in my unit was we thought all the way back to our time in Kosovo. And what our time here taught us was how to treat and respectfully take care of civilians, especially now that we were in full combat. And I believe that we did a really good job with doing our best to protect civilians at all costs during those operations. And I attribute that experience, that lesson learned, to our first mission here, which was peacekeeping, support, and stability. It was so critical to influencing a military organization to do the right thing at a whole nother level that we may not have had that experience had we gone into combat without it. And the people of Kosovo gave that to us. For me personally, I ended up serving 19 more years in the Marines after my time here, 31 years total. 6 different combat tours all over the world, tsunamis in Japan, disasters, earthquakes. And what I learned here was how to be compassionate, sympathetic, open to culture, open to different ideas, and open to the fact that the influence and the abilities and the capabilities that the United States brings should not be forced on people, it should be offered. And in cooperation with those people, as long as they embrace that, and even if they don't, we can work together to achieve whoever that hosting nation's goals are, so that in the end, we can celebrate a partnership like we have today, 250 years, or when I was here, an infant UBT of 1 year old at the time, now 25 years. And so my message is simple. Your people, the people of Kosovo, are determined, resilient, and you're very courageous. You taught me courage when I thought I had courage, and you made me work for the rest of my life. And had I not met Mr. Tafilai and Besa, because now I have the ability to influence policy, Congress, and the White House. I work with all of those directly every day. And you have my promise that I will do everything within my means to pursue some of the efforts that we talked about today with NATO, European Union, and anything else, because sometimes both gentlemen are right. It's not the politicians that are going to make things happen. You never know when you're going to beat someone that has way more influence that you think that they have until they start delivering and providing you the opportunities that you didn't know. And I hope that myself, Besa, and others in the delegation can do that for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marquez. Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude today's program, I would like to extend our sincere appreciation to all our distinguished guests, speakers, institutional partners, and participants for being part of this important event. Your presence and contributions have made today's gathering both meaningful and memorable. On behalf of UBT, thank you for joining us. We now invite you to the networking cocktail, and we wish you a pleasant afternoon, and we look forward to welcoming you again at future UBT events. God bless America, God bless Kosovo and UBT. Thank you.